Before the story begins, I'd like to ask you to subscribe and like. This will help the channel grow. The White Veil Conspiracy. Winter Detective Story. Winter arrived early in the town of Silver Vale, the kind of winter that didn't announce itself with beauty but with silence. Snow fell thick and dry, layering the streets, roofs, and frozen riverbanks in a white veil that swallowed sound and softened edges. By the first week of December, the town felt sealed off from the rest of the world, as if it existed inside a snow globe someone had forgotten on a shelf. Detective Mara Ellison hated winters like this. Not because of the cold, she'd grown up with it, but because snow had a way of erasing things too easily. Tracks disappeared, timelines blurred. Lives felt cleaner when everything looked untouched. The call came just after dawn. "A body," the dispatcher said. "North Ridge. Ski Trail Maintenance Road." Mara arrived to find the forest unnaturally quiet. Pine branches sagged under the weight of snow, and the sky hung low and colorless. The victim lay beside a snowmobile path, half covered by drifting powder. A man in his late 30s, dressed for the cold but not for survival. No visible blood. No signs of a struggle. At first glance, it looked like exposure. At second glance, it didn't. His face was calm. Too calm, eyes half open, lips pale but relaxed. His gloves were neatly placed beside him, fingers aligned. His jacket was zipped. There were no defensive marks, no panic frozen into his expression. Mara crouched, brushing snow from the man's collar. A faint puncture mark sat just below the jawline, almost invisible against reddened skin. Not frostbite. A needle. The medical examiner arrived an hour later and confirmed it quietly. Fast-acting sedative, likely injected. The man hadn't frozen to death. He'd fallen asleep first. His wallet identified him as Daniel Voss, logistics consultant, temporary resident, staying at a rental cabin near the river. A nobody. Which made Mara uneasy. Snowmobiles didn't stop on maintenance roads without a reason. And men didn't calmly lie down in sub-zero temperatures unless they'd been made to. As officers canvassed the area, Mara noticed something else. The snow around the body showed signs of careful disturbance. Not chaotic footprints, but controlled movement. Someone had stood there for a while. Waiting. Watching. Whoever killed Daniel Voss hadn't been in a hurry. They had time. Daniel Voss's cabin sat on the edge of Silvervale's frozen river, its windows dark, chimney cold. The place looked untouched. Too untouched for someone who'd been living there for weeks. Mara unlocked the door, with a key found in Voss's pocket. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with the smell of electronics and cold wood. No personal photos. No clutter. Just equipment. Laptops. External drives. Satellite phone. A portable signal booster mounted near the window. This wasn't a vacation rental. It was a temporary operations hub. Mara's pulse slowed as she moved through the rooms. Voss hadn't lived here. He'd worked here. And whatever he'd been doing required isolation, privacy, and winter cover. On the kitchen table lay printed maps of Silver Vale and the surrounding region. Not tourist maps, infrastructure layouts. Fiber lines. Power substations. Old municipal tunnels long since sealed. Several locations were circled in red, connected by lines forming a rough spiral around the town center. At the spiral's core, December 31st, New Year's Eve. In the bedroom, Mara found the locks. Extra ones. Reinforced bolts installed from the inside. Someone had been afraid of intrusion, or had planned to keep someone out until a certain time. Or in. Forensics flagged encrypted files on Voss's devices, but one folder wasn't protected. It contained a single document titled White Veil Protocol. Inside were notes about visibility reduction, emergency response delays during snowstorms, and the psychological impact of prolonged winter isolation on small populations. This wasn't academic. It was tactical. The final page contained a short sentence, asterisk. Winter doesn't cause chaos. It creates opportunity. Star. Mara stepped back from the table, the weight of the words settling in her chest. Daniel Voss hadn't been running from someone. He'd been silenced. And Silvervale wasn't just the setting. It was the target. By the third day, Whitehaven no longer felt like a town. It felt like a sealed container. Snow continued to fall, not violently, but persistently, the kind that erased edges and softened truths. Detective Nora Hale stood on the frozen pedestrian bridge overlooking the river, watching the slow current push slabs of ice beneath its surface. Somewhere under that water, she knew, were answers people had tried to bury. The victim's name was now public. Arthur Bell, Municipal Records Officer, 49, unmarried, no children, no criminal history. On paper, a man who barely existed. In reality, a man who had controlled access to decades of city documentation, zoning changes, land transfers, sealed permits. And now he was dead. The autopsy confirmed what Nora already suspected. Bell hadn't been killed where he was found. He had been strangled elsewhere, then staged beneath the snow-draped gazebo in Founders Park, positioned carefully as if sleeping. No defensive wounds. No signs of panic. Whoever killed him had known him, or at least had known how to keep him calm. Back at headquarters, the walls of the briefing room were covered with enlarged photographs. Bell's route home, CCTV stills blurred by snowfall, satellite images of the park before dawn. Red string traced connections between addresses, names, dates. One pattern emerged slowly. Bell had accessed archived winter permits repeatedly over the past 6 months. Files dating back 15 to 20 years. Construction approvals near the northern forest line. Infrastructure reroutes approved during extreme weather events. Blizzards so severe no inspections could be performed. Nora called it what it was, paperwork done in white noise. Her partner, Detective Evan Cross, traced one permit to a luxury chalet development that officially failed years ago. Investors vanished. Construction halted. The land was reclaimed by snow and forest. But financial records told a different story. Money had moved. Quietly. Through shell companies. And Bell had signed off on every amendment. That afternoon, a city worker came forward. Nervous. Pale. He claimed Bell had asked him, 2 weeks earlier, a strange question. If a road disappears under snow for long enough, does it ever really exist? That night, Nora returned to Founders Park. Snow had been freshly disturbed near the gazebo, too fresh to be accidental. Beneath the top layer, her flashlight revealed faint boot impressions, preserved like fossils. They led toward the tree line. Someone had come back. The forest road north of Whitehaven wasn't on any current map. It appeared only after Evan overlaid historical zoning files with outdated satellite data. A thin, winding access route, officially decommissioned 17 years ago after severe winter damage. In reality, it had simply been removed from records. Snowplows never cleared it. GPS systems ignored it. But tire tracks said otherwise. Nora and Evan drove in silence, headlights cutting narrow tunnels through the falling snow. The temperature dropped sharply as elevation increased. Cell service vanished. After 30 minutes, the trees opened. The chalet stood there like a mistake, modern, angular, its dark wood exterior almost invisible against the forest. No lights. No smoke. But the driveway had been recently cleared. Inside, the air smelled of cold metal and old paper. They found filing cabinets first. Dozens of them. Municipal records. Originals. Documents stamped. Void, destroyed, redacted. Bell's handwriting covered the margins, notes, corrections, alternate dates. This wasn't corruption. It was curation. In the main room, a long table was covered with maps of Whitehaven and its outskirts. Certain zones were circled repeatedly. Always winter access roads. Always during extreme weather years. Evan found a laptop, still warm. On the screen was an email draft, unsent, addressed to no one. Asterisk. If they freeze the truth long enough, it becomes permanent. Star. Footsteps crunched outside. Nora reached for her weapon just as a figure appeared in the doorway. A woman in her late 30s, wrapped in a white parka dusted with snow. She raised her hands calmly. "My name is Clara Voss," she said, "and Arthur Bell wasn't supposed to die yet." She explained everything. The White Veil wasn't a conspiracy to steal money. It was a plan to erase responsibility. Developers, officials, inspectors, all complicit in dangerous winter projects that caused deaths years ago. Avalanche zones ignored. Riverbanks weakened. Roads approved where people later vanished beneath snow and ice. Bell had been preserving the truth, not to expose it, but to control when it surfaced. "And now," Clara said quietly, "someone wants it gone forever." Outside, wind howled through the trees, and somewhere in the forest, engines started. The blizzard arrived without warning, swallowing North Point in white silence. By the time Detective Nora Vale reached the outskirts of the town, visibility had dropped to less than 20 meters. Snow moved sideways, scraping against buildings like something alive. It was the kind of storm people remembered for decades, the kind that erased roads, timelines, and sometimes entire truths. The abandoned weather station stood on a hill beyond the frozen marshlands, its radio tower leaning slightly, iced over like a broken spine. This was where the encrypted signal had last been traced. This was where the conspiracy narrowed to a single point. Inside, the air was stale and metallic. Backup generators hummed weakly. Walls were lined with old maps, satellite prints, handwritten temperature logs going back 30 years. Someone had been here recently. Boot prints, melted snow, a thermos still warm. Nora moved carefully, gun drawn. In the main control room, she found the board. Photographs, documents, newspaper clippings pinned beneath layers of frost-resistant plastic. At the center was the image that tied everything together. The winter convoy accident from 15 years earlier, officially ruled an avalanche. Unofficially, it had been a controlled burial. The victims hadn't been random. They were auditors, whistleblowers, environmental analysts, who had discovered that North Point's seasonal shipping routes were being used to move illegal chemical waste beneath frozen rivers, disguised as winter supply convoys. The cold preserved everything, including evidence. And someone had been killing again to keep it buried. A door creaked behind her. "You're too late," a voice said calmly. Nora turned. Deputy Mayor Thomas Rourke stood there, coat dusted with snow, no weapon visible. He looked tired. Relieved, even. "We called it the White Veil," he said. "Winter covers what shouldn't be seen. It always has." Rourke admitted everything. The disappearances. The staged accidents. The murders timed with storms so bodies would be lost, frozen, unrecoverable. The town's prosperity had been built on winter silence. "You can't expose this," he said. "The storm will trap you here. Records will vanish. And no one will believe you." Nora raised her weapon. Outside, the wind howled louder, as if the town itself was listening. The storm lasted 36 hours. When it ended, North Point woke to a silence heavier than snowfall. Rourke was arrested alive. That mattered. He was escorted out of the weather station as the first snowplows reached the hill, his face pale, eyes empty. He didn't resist. He only looked back at the town below, as if seeing it for the last time. Evidence poured out once the veil lifted. hidden convoys, false permits, satellite data deliberately corrupted during winter months, frozen riverbeds used as temporary vaults, bodies recovered downstream once the thaw began. The conspiracy unraveled faster than it had been built. By New Year's Eve, North Point canceled its annual winter illumination parade. No fireworks. No celebration. Just quiet streets and lights left dim. Nora stood on the bridge where it had all begun, watching the river move slowly beneath sheets of broken ice. She thought about how many winters had passed with lives sealed beneath snow, and how close this one had come to doing the same. Winter didn't hide the truth forever. It only delayed it. As midnight approached, church bells rang once. Soft, restrained. No one cheered, and for the first time in decades, North Point entered the new year without pretending everything was untouched. The white veil was gone. What remained was responsibility.